Hey guys, this is Meri Gray and this is my AP Lit project 2018. Okay, so let's start with my name. Despite being asked a bunch of times, my parents did not name me after the show Grey's Anatomy. My parents thought it was a pretty name and so they went with it. Meredith is a Welsh name and means great lord. I also go by Mary, which most of you know me by. My middle name is Ashley and it stands for Ash Tree Grove, and pretty much my last name is just the color, which is pretty fitting because half of my closet is gray clothing. February 24th, 2000. That's when I was born. Well, and some other people like Rachel Levin, who's a major YouTube star, and Steve Jobs, who we all know because he founded our amazing smartphones. It didn't really occur to me that since there are only 365 days in a year, a lot can happen on just one day. For example, in 1863, the Arizona Territory was created. In 1868, the U.S. House of Representatives voted 26 to 47 to impeach Andrew Johnson. In 1924, Mahatma Gandhi was released from jail. In 1980, the USA Olympic hockey team defeated Finland 4-2 to win gold. And in 2018, at the Winter Olympics, a man from the Czech Republic won 2 gold medals in 2 different sports. I was born in 2000, and I don't remember much of my childhood. There are bits and pieces, but I don't have the entire picture. I wish I could have been able to remember what 9/11 was like, which might seem morbid, but I've always wondered where I might have been or what I might have been doing. It seems sad, but mostly everything that I remember is positive. I have a brother who goes to Purdue. I'm going to IU. He's an engineer. I'm going to be a nurse. I've always wanted to go to IU ever since I was 12 and first stepped onto the campus. I didn't know if I was ever going to be good enough for college swimming, but now I can finally say that I am going to a top 10 program and could not be more excited for this journey. I'm going to start off with this. I've never been a book lover or a good reader, but they forced me to read in school, so I did, sometimes. But it always took me a lot longer to find a good book that I was able to read and get through. That also was enjoyable to me. The book I chose that I relate to is Pride and Prejudice by Jane Austen, a humorous love story set in England, where a wealthy man named Charles rented the manor near the Bennets, a family of 7 with 5 unmarried daughters. When Mr. Bennet goes to visit their new neighbors, they are all invited to a ball. Mr. Bingley's friend, Mr. Darcy, isn't pleased with this event and refuses to dance with Elizabeth, the main character. Over time, Mr. Darcy becomes infatuated with Elizabeth, but then another rich man comes along, Mr. Collins, who proposes to Elizabeth, but she says no. The Bingleys and Mr. Darcy leave the town, and during that time, Mr. Collins becomes engaged to Elizabeth's best friend. One day, Mr. Darcy proposes to Elizabeth, but she refuses because she doesn't like him. After she says no, Mr. Darcy delivers a letter to her, and in this letter he admits that he urged Charles Bingley to distance himself from Jane, but claims he did it because he thought their romance was not serious. They are apart for a bit, and in that time, Elizabeth's sister Jane elopes, and that leads Elizabeth to realizing her feelings for Mr. Darcy. And at the end of the novel, Mr. Darcy proposes one more time, and she finally says yes. Jane Austen, the writer of Pride and Prejudice. She was born on December 16, 1775, in Hampshire, England. She was born to her parents, and she was the seventh child in her family. She was educated at home because her father had an extensive library, and she began to write as a child, and when she was 19, she wrote a novella called Lazy Susan, which was a collection of letters. In her early 20s, she wrote Pride and Prejudice. It was also known as First Impressions, and her dad sent it to get published, but that didn't go through. When she was 25 years old, her family moved to a town called Bath. Her father died, and the family moved to Southampton in 1806. But wait, in 1811, at the age of 35, Jane Austen finally published Pride and Prejudice. In 1815, Jane Austen started to grow ill, and she began writing Persuasion. She finished it the following year. In 1817, Austen wrote her will, and her sister, Cassandra, moved closer to a doctor. On July 18, 1817, at the age of 41, Jane Austen died. I relate to this story because I am a tough person just like Elizabeth, and I definitely wouldn't have been into Mr. Darcy at the beginning, especially because he lied. And I know it would have taken me just as long to trust him as it did for Elizabeth. And I am very quiet to myself, but very open around others I know very well. Okay, lastly, my future. I'm going to Indiana University in Bloomington, Indiana. I'm going to study human biology to become a nurse. And I'm also going to be swimming on the Indiana University swim team. So finally, after 4 years, I can check off the box next to high school.